from the All Indiana Podcast Network. It's Diversity Focus Today. Now, here's your host, Ricky Solid Gold Clark.
And welcome once again to another edition of Diversity Focus Today. I'm your host, Ricky Solid Gold Clark, along with our team today. We have the lovely and talented Dr. Tammy Harris,
Hello.
Dr. T. Now, we've got Dr. T's professor from long time ago, back when they had horse and buggy.
Not
not
me
that far
back.
back.
Yeah, no,
Not that far back.
Now, remember, this is my second career, so I went back to school to become an art therapist. So she's my professor from becoming that of an art therapist.
And that would have been 2000?
2003.
19, okay.
But she's been in the field far before I learned with the greatest. So
you learn with the best of the best.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to, our guest, of course, is Roberta Shoemaker-Beal. All right. And so I got that right. Okay. So we're going to turn it, since it's your professor, we're going to turn everything over to you and let you do your thing.
Okay. Hi. Thank you, Ricky. I wanted to just kind of start off by saying that September is recognized as Suicide Awareness Month. That's why I felt it was necessary to continue this meaningful conversation with our DFT community, but more so concentrating on the subject of grief. So it may be past that awareness, but nobody really talk about the grief. So I thought having to be able to talk through grief through the management of art therapy. Recent events, including mass shootings and warfare and acts of terrorism, have featured predominantly on our news and contributed to a highlighted collective sense of loss in our communities. So previously, just as COVID-19 pandemic had introduced experiences of grief in our homes throughout media channels and serving a continuing reminder of personal losses affecting many individuals. So I then thought, well, what's the numbers behind this madness, right? And so I went to the CDC website, and in some, it had a lot of numbers and all that, but in some, I just wanted to say that the latest mortality statistics for 2024 revealed significant changes in the leading causes of death in the United States. Yes, at one point, COVID was in the top 10, but it had recently dropped for the first time since the pandemic began, with now suicide taking the 10th spot on that top 10 list. Yes. I also went a little bit deeper with cultural aspects of this. It turns out that Black Americans continues to experience the highest age-adjusted death rate, while multicultural non-Hispanic individuals have some of the lowest rates. So the provisional numbers that I found indicated that just over 3 million U.S. deaths in the 2024. That's a lot. So a lot of, and most contributing to those deaths were that of heart disease, cancer, and unintentional injury. Like unintentional injury is things like accidental things or preventable events. And unfortunately, self-inflicted gun violence among youth and self. So, and then I guess with even that, the loss of among the American community is that discrepancy with heart disease and cancers and medical care. So a lot of us is out there hurting, across the board. So grief is like that power struggle, I think. And I thought Roberta Shoemaker-Beal, my previous professor from St. Mary Woods College when I was studying to become an art therapist. I have since took her out of retirement, I think. That's what she told me at one point. So I want to introduce here Roberta Shoemaker-Beal, a former art therapy graduate professor who is now semi-retired. Can I say that? Okay.
Yes.
And she will be providing information on the dynamics of traumatic and complex grief, including their distinctions, effects, and approaches to healing. Welcome, Roberta.
Well, hello, Tammy.
Thank you.
Thank you for this honor. I have to say, I'm very impressed with several things. number one, that your statistics from the CDC, CDCP2, the Disease Control Center, completely jive with what I've been aware of here in Texas. We have a group here called Moms Demand Action, and that's because this month, the month that you've noted and had this wonderful panel that you mentioned last week, it's also the month of the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School.
Yes.
And we've had in Texas, we tend to have more school shootings, and that's happened this week here and other places. So the timeliness of you addressing this topic is very important. And the fact that you mentioned traumatic grief is important. We all have a natural emotion that we will feel when we have a natural loss. And for someone my age, I have lost my mother. So our emotional life is prepared to lose an elder, prepared to lose people older. It's less natural to grieve for the loss of a child. And there's a national group, Compassionate Friends, which is to support the parents who've lost a child. But as you use that term, that's so important for everyone to be aware of. When a child is lost to violence, like in a school shooting, like Sandy Hook this month, or when someone loses a family member to suicide, especially a parent. I have a friend who's lost a child to suicide. That's traumatic grief.
Okay.
That's the kind of grief that chokes you up. You can't speak. Because grief is felt not just in our head. It's not just something we can talk about, because grief is felt in every cell of our body, especially if it's a child who's literally been in the womb of a mother. That child has been a part of her. And if she loses that child, it's very traumatic. So it's a much more serious kind of grief.
Wow.
So the grief you're addressing this month in Suicide Awareness Month, and there's a lot of depression and anxiety at this time of year, the month of September. It's very timely. So I thank you. Thank you for addressing this topic.
Thank you. I learned from the best.
Oh, bless your heart.
There you go.
Well, let me share with your audience the reason that I have, for the last 15 years, been focusing on healing from grief. And anyone who's had a traumatic loss, like a suicide, or someone been experiencing depression and anxiety as a result of suicide, for the last 15 years, I've been working with a group in Philadelphia called Mothers in Charge. And that group was formed by a woman named Dorothy Spate Johnson. And Dorothy had lost a little sister at 4 years old to leukemia. And she was a professionally trained counselor who was shocked into traumatic grief when her son was shot on the streets of Philadelphia. There, at the time, 10 years ago, Philadelphia was no longer the city of brotherly love.
Oh, wow.
Philadelphia, New York, and Chicago were vying for who would have the most homicides per capita.
Wow. Yeah.
So Dorothy had already studied grief because of the loss of her little sister. And then on the news, 2 weeks after her son was shot, believe it or not, for his tennis shoes, he was going to class. He was an architectural student and moving up professionally in his community, kind of moving out of the more impoverished African-American community. But the kids who didn't have the privilege, Dorothy said, of her son, would target people like her son who could afford the fancy tennis shoes. So her son was shot over a pair of tennis shoes.
Wow. I do
stolen.
recall during that time, it was a lot of that going on, unfortunately. And
Dorothy was more prepared than some, having studied grief because of her sister. But 2 weeks later on the television, she saw another mother, a white mother. Dorothy's from the African American community. The white mother had a son shot on the street.
Oh, wow.
So Dorothy went and knocked on her door and said, we mothers have to get together. And that's when they started the organization in Philadelphia where I was made aware of this tremendous amount of violence in some inner city neighborhoods. And so I was invited to speak there by a social worker, a friend of mine from Baltimore. I live in Texas now, but I knew Dr. Betty Lee Davis, and she said, Roberta, since I've gotten my PhD in social work at Bryn Mawr University up here near Philadelphia, I'm volunteering at the Mothers in Charge group because these women are so amazing. They are trying to do everything they can to educate the community on exactly what you were trying to do last week, Tammy, is to alert people and try to educate people about violence and how to deal with the violence, how to act as positively as we can, and as you brought up and why you have me here, to deal with grief. Yes. So Betty Lee, my old friend from Baltimore, I knew her, we worked together at Johns Hopkins Hospital. She wanted me to do a workshop called Finding Creative Pathways Through Grief. Because she knew from running grief support groups for Mother in Charge every Thursday night, they still have them every Thursday night in Philadelphia. They have tremendous resources, and they have proven so effective in the city of Philadelphia that they will help any city in the country, Indianapolis, if it wants to. If you or some of your viewers here, concerned citizens, Tammy, concerned and compassionate citizens, want to start a Mothers in Charge group in Indianapolis, they'll help you do it. And they have, you will hear their program if you just call their phone number, which you can read on the screen soon. Betty Lee called me to come to Philadelphia.
Right.
And I had lunch with Dorothy. She's an amazing woman.
Wow.
She and her partner who started Mothers in Charge. And at that time they were growing. They had a board of directors.
Nice.
So I asked Dorothy, what do you think would be the best workshop I could do for finding creative pathways through grief? And I had learned through my research in grief that when people get past the initial traumatizing stage of grief, and many times they just pull away, and they can't even speak. It's grief is buried deep in the body, as it was for me. When I painted a painting, I had the experience of the painting itself.
Wow.
It was like something in me that I wasn't even conscious of. It was deep in my body. When my grandfather died, it was when I was in a safe place that night, staying at my cousin's house, that I literally woke up in the middle of the night and I wailed. It was like the grief was in every cell of my body.
Wow.
Because I had been raised by my grandparents as kids, because my parents were in war work. So I had to be in a safe place. I had to know that I could let out these feelings that were deep in my body. And Betty Lee found out the same thing when she began running grief support groups on Thursday nights for Mothers in Charge. It was easier for the women to grieve. It's kind of like society lets women release their tears and wail and talk, but it's much harder for men.
Oh, wow.
We expect men in our society to be brave in song, and their father dies or their mother dies and they should go back to work in 2 days.
Right.
And that's almost unfair of our society, because it's harder for men. We want men just to go back to work and be responsible and not get in touch with their grief.
Right.
And that's almost unfair to our men. So Mothers in Charge allows men to come into their grief support group. But Betty Lee noticed, Roberta, words are not enough for some people. They need to be in some kind of therapy that can get into their body. And in our therapy, we work with our hands. We have our paintbrushes. We can work with clay. we can smear finger paint. We can actually get below our neck. The words are up in our head.
Right.
But grief is in our entire body.
And like you said, the gut there, it goes into that gut, right?
Yes, it's in our gut. I literally had to wail.
So for our viewers, what could they do as far as a media art directive that can process traumatic grief in a way that could close the gap? We had a question from one of our viewers before asking about grief and how does art therapy help with that? So what could you do in describe maybe in 5 minutes or so, something our viewers and listeners, as boys and girls, men and women, as Ricky would say, will connect those two to be able to express and help.
I'm glad you asked that. I have something right here. I want to share this slide because I want people to think of the goal of their doing some kind of art therapy as tapping into the creative loop process. Okay. In other words, you see the head's up here.
So there's a little figurine for those who can't see.
So yeah, you all, my students used to call this my gingerbread man.
Gingerbread head. So it's a little figurine that's like a gingerbread, and it has arrows coming outward and arrows going inward. And in the outward, you have expression.
Yes.
And on the inward, you have sensation.
Yes.
And at the head, you have perception. And what I noticed,
well, perception is really for inside of us.
Inside.
So if you think of the 4 positions of the creative loop, think of putting out your right hand or left hand if you're left-handed.
Okay.
And think of sensations coming into your body.
Okay.
So then they come into the center of you where your heart is, where your soul is. This is below your chin.
Okay.
This is in your body. Right this is where your hands and playing like a child again with art materials allows you to forget your head and just go back and be a child again. Okay. So that perception is it's deep within us, and every single one of us is going to perceive things in our own way based on what our life experience has been.
Exactly.
So if we just play around with the art materials, and they can be any range of colors,
watercolors, hopefully crayons, markers,
anything you can just buy at the grocery store or the corner drugstore. And so just play with whatever feels right in a circle.
Okay, so you draw. Okay, there we go, a circle, a mandala.
So just imagine a circle. The woman who did the research for art therapy called the Great Round of the Mandala noticed that just a circle the size of a dinner plate or the pot of a pan about that size, it's about the size of our face. So if we just do a circle on any piece of paper, just any piece of paper out of a computer, if you don't have a drawing pad, but if you have a drawing pad, that's even better. And whatever you do in the center of the circle, think of it as the safe space.
The safe space. And don't overthink it. Just think of what you want to put in there. Do you have a prompt that related to grief itself, like to process the grief, or just say, think of safe place?
Well, close your eyes for a minute. Put the paper down in front of you with your circle, and then you have your colors nearby. And close your eyes a minute and think of a memory, your most important memory of the person you're grieving for.
Okay.
So close your eyes and think of that circle as the safe place.
Okay.
You can do anything in that circle you want to do, because this is not art for exhibit. You don't have to be an artist.
It's very raw emotion and stuff. So what would the viewer or the person who's attempting to do a mandala, which is a circular shape, and then you processing with your materials aside of you of that person that you're grieving, what is the next step after that? Should they contact an art therapist, or do they just kind of write a journal reflection about that? What would be the next step if nobody's around to help them through that?
Well, those are very good. Those are very good suggestions. Tammy, I always thought you were one of the smartest of my students at St. Mary the Woods, but we can't have favorites.
Right, we can't have favorites. But I just
But
want to
what
be
you're
able.
saying is true. So if someone does, remember, this is not art for exhibit in an art gallery. That's
Right.
nothing to, so you don't have to be an artist. So if you draw whatever you feel like drawing, whatever color you want to do it in, think where you started. Down in the lower corner, make a little list of what you thought of, what ideas came to mind when you made your first mark. Just make a listing from, well, what did I think of first? And what did I think of second? And what did I think of third? And you will realize that you have gone below your chin.
Oh, wow. In that,
By drawing, you've gotten away from the words and you've gotten into your feelings.
wow.
And that's what we want to do. We want the self-expressive art in the safe place of the mandala. Just like it was safe for me to wail in my cousins. And I sometimes feel that I have to back away when my feelings are too intense. It's kind of like something catches my throat and closes it up. But when somehow I can get in touch with those things that seem just so powerful, I can't even speak about them. And
So
they come out.
So I would just say too, Roberta, because I know time is coming, I will put myself out there and provide people support since I am a board certified art therapist and practicing. So I'll also tell to my viewers, if you're wanting to process or even talk to me about just some clarity in that, my phone number is 317-426-8380, 317-426-8380.
But let me just say one thing.
Okay.
If you don't have access to an art therapist, just find a trusted family member, perhaps somebody else who's also grieving.
Yes.
Or that same person.
That's definitely a whole nother.
And the two of you can draw mandalas together. But if you get to a point, if both of you are, or either one of you get to a point where you feel the feelings are so powerful that you do need to talk to a therapist, then do call someone. So Tammy, I'm so glad you offered your phone number and you offered that service to someone.
And then one thing you mentioned when you showed the mandala just now is they had some sense of coloring book. I remember you mentioned that to me.
Yes.
Prior to the show.
Thank you for bringing that up. Your audience, wherever they are, Indianapolis, Indiana, or around the country, if it goes out on podcast, may remember when there used to be mandala coloring books just of circular pictures. So you don't have to be an artist. You can look for a mandala coloring book, if anyone remembers them, just drawings in circles. And it just can be very soothing to work between your hand and your eye in total silence. And sometimes closing your eyes and just remembering the happy memories. Because when you get past the initial traumatic grief, which can just choke us up and we feel it in our body, you'll get to a point where you can find creative pathways through grief. And it could be anything. It could be making an album of pictures, gathering together in a drawer somewhere, your happiest memories with that person, photographs.
Yeah, I actually done that for my mom. I created a whole memorial of photographs and the last year of her life and things that we done, just celebrating through photographs. Definitely
That's beautiful.
Made poster boards of
you can make a post little different pieces of things together of photographs and put it in a frame, or just have them in a place in the house where you can go and be with that person. I mean, then you might want to do something even more creative, like plant a tree or plant a garden of their favorite flowers.
Yes.
And go out and just sit there and have happy memories.
So
find a creative pathway.
That's what I was thinking. It sounds like you're saying take that and make it a joyful remembrance than that of a sorrow remembrance. You know, it's like Grief is a process that goes through different stages that people may not know about, of that initial shock and denial, and then bargaining, and then anger, and then kind of that depression, and then kind of resolution, but not necessarily resolution. So I often tell my clients to work through those emotions. And I think creating those mandalas and creating that safe space, I'm sorry, to do that does provide you to, I would say, ride that wave of grief and putting that
I'm glad you mentioned the most difficult emotion that comes up with grief, and that's anger.
anger.
And if you go to the Mothers in Charge website, they have anger management groups. That's
Okay.
part of their week-long schedule, that they would help anyone in any city
Nice.
create a Mothers in Charge support group. It's very simple. It's you know what the schedule is, just be there for people, just have
Wow.
I have a slide of the elders at Alexis Point, locally nearby, just pictures of the ladies, and you can just be sitting at your kitchen table
Oh, wow.
and doing this and talking with friends. If you don't have a grief counselor around, or you can't find an art therapist to talk about the Picto story, you know, what you thought of when you were first drawing, and what then did you think of next, and what feelings did it bring up for you. It's just, art making feels good.
Yes.
Art making, so many people have said, and I'm seeing a lot of it on social media too.
Yes.
Just art making feels good.
And this is a lot of my grief behind me. It's blurred, but that's a lot, a whole nother story. Like I said, we're going to have another maybe pick up conversation on this at some time, just to check in with people and see how your suggestions may have helped them. And I would say, if anyone wanting to find or talk to me maybe about this, you can reach me at 317-426-8380. I'll slow it down, as Ricky would say, 317-426-8380. I also have a website called Virtual Art Therapy Consulting Group. So I offer different type of support through that. If you're looking for in different states or city, as Roberta said, you can also look up the American Art Therapy Association website and find a local art therapist in your area. And how would they be able to touch with you, Roberta, for your wisdom in this area?
Oh, well, thank you. If I have time, I'm more than happy to talk with people at 512-648-1006. And I am creating a website. It's not quite up yet, but give me a few months and I'll have a website that'll have a lot of this information on it too.
Okay. Roberta, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for the timeliness of this, Tammy. Very timely. Bye for now.